Welcome, everybody. Time again for another Word Balloon Alive, the comic book conversation show. John Suntress here, the man who is redefining funniness, is joining us today. I think one of the great satirical voices in comics these days, and that's not hyperbole. Mark Russell, everybody. Welcome back, dude.
Thanks for having me.
Great stuff, man. I mean, honestly, always excited when I see a new title for you, and really have been loving what you've been doing. But given that we started with the Alex Ross Fantastic Four montage, I do want to talk first up about Fantastic Four life stories. I think, is that issue 3 that's coming out next week?
That's it.
There you go. Now, in contrast, lots of tragedy going on in the dynamics of the family four.
Yeah. Not. I hope nobody's buying it thinking it's going to be really funny based on that intro. There's comic relief in Fantastic Four, but it's all relief. It's relief from some rather heavy dramatic stuff that's happening. So, but yeah, and for those who aren't familiar with the concept, it's the life story. So each issue follows the Fantastic Four in a different decade. And the one that's coming up is the 1980s.
And I love the fact that it is kind of an alternate history. Ben and Reed are not college buddies.
Right.
They don't meet Victor Von Doom until later in their professional careers. And everything really, in a lot of ways, even though it is a different spin, the heart of it really is where Stan Lee was in 1961 and really where the world was in terms of the Cold War and the space race. And John Kennedy asking Reed Richards directly that NASA has been failing as it had. Meanwhile, the Russians beat us to space, Yuri Gagarin. So turns to the private sector, Reed Richards, to build a rocket.
Yeah, I wanted to really approach this as what if the Fantastic Four and the Marvel heroes had kind of interacted with our history, understanding that it's history. Because when Stan Lee and Jack Kirby were doing Fantastic Four in the 1960s, they weren't thinking, oh, here's the Fantastic Four set in the 1960s. They were just writing about the present. And so I wanted to go back and write a Fantastic Four set in the times in which they were writing it, but with the understanding that this is history and that what's important to us now as the historical events in the 60s, the 70s, and the 80s are the ones that they sort of get embroiled in, what that would have actually been like for our history. Half of it is about how history would have affected the Fantastic Four, and the other half is really about how the Fantastic Four would have affected history.
It's a great story, man. And the last issue that came out was the 70s. And I mean, one great kernel of that is Sue Storm stepping up for the ERA. Honestly, it's really cool. And also, again, there's trouble in the family. I mean, I love the fact that Ben really does kind of resent what happened to him, and
that factored into my decision of making it more like these guys just sort of were thrown together in crisis as opposed to having this long history, because I wanted everything important that happens between the characters to sort of happen on the page. I don't want to have to do a lot of exposition or do a lot of backdrop. I wanted them to sort of experience these things for the first time together. And so, I factored in a lot of the decisions that led to this story being a little different than canonically what has happened in Fantastic Four.
Yeah, it makes for a different kind of drama, and I love the fact that Namor is in Sue's life, and I'm a big believer of there is definitely, as much as she stays with Reed, there's even in the regular 616, Sue's paying attention to Namor and vice versa. And I don't mean it in any infidelity way. I don't want people, how dare you?
Right. But part of it is that our lives sort of intersect with each other's at different points where we're sometimes traveling on the same path with some people and not traveling on the same path with other people. And it kind of acknowledges that Reed, for better or for worse, chose to lock himself in a laboratory because he thought that was what was best. And Sue was out trying to change the world because that's what she thought was best. And it's not really about one being good and the other one being bad. It's just about they both wanted different things, and those different things collide at some point, which happens, in normal human relationships. You butt heads, you want different things out of life, you grow apart.
tell me about Johnny in this whole thing, because we've had a couple scenes where Johnny and Sue have good heart to hearts. I mean, brother and sister, obviously, and Sue felt
Yeah.
responsible for she's like, I should have been a more tougher older sister and said no, as much as Johnny wanted to be part of the initial mission, got Ben to be part of the initial mission and everything. But yeah,
Yeah.
where do you see Johnny right now in the midst of this
Well,
story?
I think, Sue feels a lot of guilt because she feels like she should have looked out for him and kept him off the flight that ended up turning him to the Human Torch. But his response to her, I think, is not as much about her as it is to him, as about him, which is like, don't worry about it. These experiences I have are all part of the great party I call life. And some of them might be good, some of them might be horrible, but I'm here to enjoy the party, whatever that entails. And that's a theme I sort of explore in the third one, is that he sort of approaches life as this grand party, and like any party, some untoward things might happen, but that's sort of his philosophy, and I think that's what makes him sort of a fun character to write, and is that he approaches everything as though this may not be good, but it's going to be a lot of fun, and I think that one thing that's also a little different about this comic than from others is that the characters take turns narrating. So issue 1, the 60s, was narrated by Reed. Issue 2, the 70s, was narrated by Sue. And issue 3 in the 80s is going to be narrated by Johnny. So it's really about his outlook on life and his approach. It's the events of the 80s as seen through Johnny's eyes.
Understood. And looking forward to that. It comes out next week, issue 3. And honestly, great ride. It makes me hope that whenever Slott is done with the FF, I would love to see you write the FF.
Oh, I would totally sign up for that. I love. They're absolutely one of my favorite titles in comics, and I think because they are first and foremost a group of friends and family who want very different things out of life, but still manage to stay together as a unit. Still manage to don't let the fact that they want very different things out of life keep them from being friends and family.
I felt like I believe it was Tim Story that did the 2 Fantastic Four movies that we've got pre MCU. The one thing he really did get right was the idea of family and everything. And I look forward to Feige and company's spin on the Fantastic Four.
Me too.
Honestly, kind of like Life Stories, part of me really wishes it would be a period piece and really be part of the Cold War and the space race, because I think we need more of that from a cinematic standpoint beyond Cap. And we've gotten little glimpses of Agent Carter through the decades and Hank Pym,
right?
They were running around, but it's like it'd be kind of nice that I just think they work. I think they work best in the past. I don't know if you feel. I mean, again, I like what Dan's doing from a contemporary standpoint as well. But
I think they probably make the most sense within the context of the space race and the counterculture of the 60s and 70s. But I think that they if you want to show a relationship and how it really works, what you got to sort of do is show how it works over time. You got to have enough time span in the story you're telling for that relationship to go through some ups and downs, which is, I think, one of the things that setting a story in the past and having it span decades allows you to do more than if you were doing a story that had to reset after each issue or told a definitive story arc, but over a shorter period of time.
No, I love this. It's 6 issues. I really loved what Zdarsky did with Spider-Man's life stories. And I hope that this happens. I hope that there are more. It'd be great to see Iron Man and some of the obvious other players and stuff, and see what the decades would do to them.
One I would really like to see, I think, is a Howard the Duck life story.
Now, based on, seriously, you got to have a pitch in there for Howard the Duck. I mean,
I don't have one, but I could whip one up.
Wow, because honestly, it would seem like such a natural fit. Given everything else you've been doing.
If they offered me another life story, I would probably ask for Howard the Duck.
That is a really interesting, great idea. I don't know, man. Well, as we're talking about this, let's transition. You've seen the love that you're already getting from the audience. Everybody just raving about what you've been doing. And truly, man, I mean, God, going back to Snagglepuss and the Flintstones, that stuff, what you're doing at Ahoy, and of course, Second Coming. Now, this is the cover to Volume 1, but you're three issues into Volume 2, and that's been really great. And man, the adventures of is it Sunburst? Is it what's
Sunstar.
Sunstar? Excuse me,
Yeah, that's
Sunstar.
Okay. You're excused. He's not exactly a household name.
No, well, and but we recognize the tropes, Sunstar and Jesus, and both having their own individual adventures, intersecting a little bit in that third issue. Did that come out today, or did that come out a couple weeks ago?
It came out last Wednesday.
Okay,
Yeah.
Excellent, man. Very, very funny, and I love also the Knights Templar story that's going on as well.
Thanks. Yeah, no, one of the really cool things about Second Coming is that it allows me to sort of jump back and forth between like stories set in the Bible and present day. And one of the things I wanted to do with the second volume is to like not just stick back and forth between like the Bible, heaven, and present day, but explore a little bit, go to like places like the 11th century AD in the Crusades. And there's one later where I go to like a Polish shtetl in like the 19th century. And so one of the things I'm really hoping to do if we do more of these is sort of like explore the history and the world revolving around Christianity and the things that they're talking about. So really make it more of sort of a fisheye lens of what's happening in these characters' lives and over the centuries.
And yeah, poor Jesus, man, he's trying so hard.
Poor Jesus.
And doing it in his Jesus way in terms of, all right, this guy's an idiot, but I'll forgive him. And I love the guy in issue 3 that, essentially this PR flack, this almost funky Flashman that is really going to like reboot Jesus for the 23rd.
Yeah, he's sort of based a little bit on Jerry Falwell Jr., because he's like a guy whose dad was a big sort of televangelist, sort of a pillar in the evangelical community, and he's more of like a club kid. He was never really a big religious guy. He's just sort of like a businessman, party boy who happened to inherit this religious empire from his father.
That's awesome. It's so funny. I was listening to several podcasts, and I haven't listened to the Jerry Falwell Jr. one yet, but they were promoting it. I'm listening to the one about the ruby red slippers from Judy Garland and with the Wizard of Oz being stolen. I don't know if you're aware of that one.
No.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's really good. It's fun. It's that combination of technically true crime. Nobody dies in this story, but it is a weird little like heist story. And then also they were promoting that they're going to do the whole Jerry Falwell Jr. Story and everything. Wow. So yeah. Well, how like are the religious forces like, were they ever, and forgive me because I don't know from our initial conversation, have you gotten bad flack from doing this story?
The irony is I got like a lot of bad flack before it came out. It's like they couldn't wait long enough to read it to decide that they hated it. So I got all the flack before. And then once it came out, it sort of demystified it. And I think most people, once they could read it for themselves, we're not just like hearing about it secondhand from, questionable sources. It sort of demystified it, and the outrage just sort of evaporated, which is kind of what I thought would happen, which is why I was kind of surprised that there was so much controversy. And there wasn't really when it was first announced. It was later. I think it was a slow news day on Fox News. They ran like a lifestyle piece about Second Coming, about how DC was making fun of Jesus. And then that's when all like the outrage started and the petition started to get DC to drop it. But since it's come out, it's, even I've had a lot of people, a lot of Christians and even evangelicals tell me like, oh, I bought this in order to hate read it, but I actually really love the way you portray Jesus Christ. And in a way, and I've had, one of the most flattering comments I got was somebody saying, you actually portray Jesus Christ better than they portray him in church.
He is. He's forgiving. He's a good guy, and
he's like more like the way he is in the Bible than he is like in sort of prosperity doctrine churches.
Absolutely,
where he's more like Tom Brady or something.
No kidding, man. Absolutely, it's crazy. So, Mark, you started as a novelist first, and then you've come to comics. Where is your novel career? Are you still writing novels?
I've written a novel that I don't know will ever see the light of day. I'm debating about whether or not to finish it. It's like 400 pages and counting, and I'm debating about whether or not to finish it or to sort of like when you catch a marlin or something, just sort of fillet it for meat and let the rest float out to sea. So I'm debating about whether or not I should just start like carving it up into smaller stories and publishing them as comics, or biting the bullet and seeing this novel through. But it's been decades in the making, and it's sort of like this albatross that just flies behind my boat.
Well, I mean, that's the thing, because honestly, it feels like, based on your output, based on the fact that a lot of publishers are working with you now, that you're really finding your audience. And again, thank God, because I really think there was this drought of good humor comics. And I mean, I love what Ahoy is doing in general. And not only are you doing Second Coming over there, but Billionaire Island, and also, and forgive me, Edgar Allan Poe, the Snifter.
Yeah, and I have a new comic coming out with them not in the not too distant future called My Bad, which is it's interesting because it tells the story of like a sort of a billionaire vigilante superhero called the Chandelier. His family owns like a lamp company, so he's the Chandelier, and he is like arch nemesis, this villain called Emperor King. And it's half told from the Chandelier's perspective, and then half told from Emperor King's perspective, about how their lives sort of collide unintentionally. But the other half about Emperor King is written by my friend Bryce Ingman, which who co-wrote Killing Red Sonja with me. So I'm excited for that to finally come out.
That's excellent, man. That sounds great. I'm looking forward to that. Now, one that dropped today, Not All Robots from AWA. Hilarious. Fantastic, man. I mean, for people who don't know, and I'll let you describe it, but I would say in the vein of great sci-fi humor like Douglas Adams. But I'll let you describe the premise if people aren't aware of Not All Robots.
Yeah, it's about a future where robots have taken all the jobs, where artificial intelligence and robotic automation have basically made humans obsolete in the workforce. So in order to keep everyone from just starving to death, they just assign a robot to every household. So that robot then becomes the breadwinner for each household. And it creates a lot of resentment, both for the humans who then suddenly have to have this metallic, monster in their homes, and they're completely beholden to it. And also for the robot, because the robot's like, well, I didn't ask for this. Now I got to support this family. And these people don't seem to like me. So it really is about how reducing people to economic roles creates a lot of resentment between us.
It's also there's an environmental problem because all the cities are under bubbles.
Yeah, and it's one of the arguments the robots make, which is really actually pretty valid, is that if we just let the humans in charge, this whole planet would be a charcoal briquette. It's only because we were able to sort of automate and take control of like climate controls and stuff that you're actually able to live in these little bubble cities where you're not burning to death, in wildfires and like desertification.
Yeah, it's also it reminds me in a great way, almost as a black humor version of that one Animatrix story. If you remember that from 20 years ago, and I don't know if you ever saw it.
I did. I don't remember specifically which story you're talking about.
Well, the one where like it kind of explains how the robots took over and like.
Oh, right, where they blacked out the sun to try to defeat the robots because they're all solar powered.
Yep.
Yeah, I remember that.
The sentience and yeah, that they have a court case and everything. It's almost the dark.
Yeah,
side
the robots
of the
sue
Asimov.
for like their own for recognition. Yeah.
It's
not completely one-sided. It's not that the humans are good and the robots are bad. It's about how they're incentivized to hate each other. Again, about how life, even if you intend well, life puts you on collision courses.
And Mike, boy, you got Deodato working for you, and he's doing a ton of AWA lately. And one of my favorite illustrators, so I think that's great, and gives it a realism, and also the design for all the various robots. They're
hits it out of the park.
Yeah,
I was just blown away when I started seeing his pages. And he does it so quickly too. He's so efficient, and he was just getting the designs like better than I imagined them. And it seemed like a weird choice at first because I mostly knew him from his superhero comics, but he captures like how these robots are all just sort of metallic edges but he gives them like emotions with like their subtle like body language, and it's just like everything he's done in this series has just been stellar.
And again, this is kind of not only things like the Matrix, and like I mentioned, I mean, I see a lot of Marvin from Hitchhiker's Guide, and forgive me because you got great names for all the robots. List off some of the robots.
Razorball's like the main one, the one who lives with the Walters family. And they give themselves sort of these tough names, like Razorball. And there's one called like Kilroy. And I don't want to spoil anything, but that becomes an issue.
Okay.
The fact, well, maybe the reason people are so afraid of these robots is they name themselves things like Terminator X. Maybe that wasn't the best idea.
But it's Ralph and Sam from like the Warner Brothers cartoons, the sheepdog,
right,
and then the coyote. Basically, yeah. Morning Ralph, morning Sam. Yeah, I mean, they really are just like these poor working class robots that hate their lives.
And the irony is that like all this automation, all this technology doesn't really solve the central problem of like work and drudgery. It just sort of dumps it onto somebody else. Same way that like, outsourcing did,
Yes.
We're just basically that's what the history of human economic progress has been, is like, who are we going to dump this drudgery on next?
Absolutely, man. No, and again, this is something that I think you address quite well in a lot of your humor comics and stuff. So and also from Ahoy. Before we leave Ahoy, of course, we've got, or excuse me, that was AWA with robots. But back to Ahoy. I mentioned earlier, you got a couple Edgar Allan Poe snifter stories, don't you?
Yeah, and I'm doing a whole series of short stories based on the cereal monsters, like. I can't, maybe for legal reasons I shouldn't say this, but yeah, loosely, it's not Count Chocula, it's the Marquis de Coco. Okay. But yeah, loosely based on the cereal monsters, and there's like a Frankenberry stand-in, but it's sort of a gothic horror story starring the cereal monsters, and it's been serialized in the Edgar Allan Poe comic, but we're actually going to put them together, and some that have not been published in Edgar Allan Poe together in a trade paperback. So
what's the title of that then?
We haven't really officially named it. I imagine this is probably going to be called the Monster Serials.
Okay.
But serials like SERI.
Right. I'm up. Absolutely. That's great, man. No, that's very funny. That's great. I got to be honest. I think I was out of my sugar cereal morning consuming phase when they came out. So I never ate any of them. What was your favorite monster cereal back in the day?
This is kind of ironic considering my career, but my favorite wasn't even really one of those monsters. It was like Fruity Pebbles.
Oh, there you go.
Fruity Pebbles is the one I really loved. And if you told me then, I would have been writing the Flintstones. But I said, whatever. Exactly. Give me more Fruity Pebbles.
Yeah, before we move on to another new book, let's take a moment to acknowledge again the Flintstone run and Snagglepuss as well, and your DC Hanna-Barbera stuff. Very, very funny.
Thanks. Yeah, there's actually news on that front too. DC's approved like a single volume hardback prestige volume for the Flintstones. It's going to contain all 12 issues of the Flintstones and the Booster Gold Flintstones crossover, the Christmas special that had nothing to do with Christmas. So yeah, I'm really excited for that, because I feel like, one of my few regrets with the Flintstones, that was like really a great experience. But one of my only regret really was that you had to buy 2 different volumes to get the whole story. And it was written as one story, but a lot of people would buy the first volume and then tell me they loved it, but then I'd say, well, what did you think of the second one? Oh, I never read it. So it's like you watched half a movie.
Totally,
you walked out in the middle of the story.
No, and that was so weird, because it was also happening to other books too. Like I remember Neil Adams, that Batman story that he did, where it was all underground in the hidden Earth, all this stuff and everything. And it's like, Batman Odyssey, and it's like, what do you mean volume 2? It's a 12-issue story. Let it run, man. It was so dumb. I don't know.
That's the way I feel.
Here, Mike Conrad, the Flintstones were amazing. More stories would be awesome. I definitely will be snagging that hardcover.
Well, thank you, Mike. Yeah. And
I don't
thanks
know.
to everybody who's come to the comments.
Absolutely. Oh yeah, DC dude also wants more Billionaire
There
Island.
will be more Billionaire Island, DC dude. I'm happy to report. Steve
That is
Hughes, we've locked him in. He can't escape now. He's on the hook for more Billionaire Island.
well, and I noticed too. It's award season in comics. Forgive me. Did you get nominated or did you win any
No,
Oscars?
I was
Son
completely
of a
blank.
bitch!
Yeah,
What the hell?
it's
Because
all right.
Billionaire Island. I mean, I know.
It's all playing. To me, the big award is being able to make a living from writing comics. Everything else is kind of like gravy, just playing with the house's money.
How you doing? Well, I mean, again, I'm not your accountant, but how you doing? Everything going all right?
Yeah, no, it's a wonderful career. I highly recommend it. It's like my day is spent, sort of like living in this palace of imagination where I can just sort of think about what I want to think about and write things down. And it's like, how, everything else, as long as you can do that and not be like living in a cardboard box, dumpster diving, it's like that's a wonderful life to bestow upon somebody. And
No question. Let me ask you about how, because we talked pretty early in COVID terms, I think last year. So has the weirdness of these 17 months been helpful? Have they been hurting you in terms of creativity? How's it affected you?
It really, I didn't really appreciate like how much it was weighing on me until probably 3 or 4 months into the shutdown and stuff. And then it became really hard for a while to be creative. It was a big transition from me because I'm used to being able to go somewhere else, not work from home.
Sure.
And I wasn't able to do that. I was having to work from home. But, compared to like the problems other people had during COVID, it's like these were very like first world sort of like, oh, my manicurist is on vacation type problems, so yeah. I got off very easy, all things considered. I'm really grateful.
I understand, man. And it's that perspective that you have that I think provides us with this great humor, and that you do really see the difference between real problems and us whining. But even just us in general whining and stuff.
But these are the problems I got, so I got to take them seriously, even if they're not that serious in the grand scheme of things.
Well, I'm glad you're working through them now, and I'm glad and again, here's hoping that it sounds like the numbers are going up vaccination wise, so maybe people will finally.
I'm hoping that we will be able to put this behind us at some point.
No question, absolutely. So coming out also later this month from Vault, Deadbox. What's Deadbox about?
It's the first horror comic I've ever written, and it's about a sort of a cursed red box machine where the movies you rent a movie and it has some like unusual knowledge about your life and situation as you're watching it. It's sort of like makes these sort of eerie predictions about things that are going on or will happen in your life. And so what I really like about the comic is that it's half about the town of Lost Turkey, which is this small out of the way town. It really kind of, I grew up in sort of a semi-rural, I didn't grow up in a small town, but I grew up in like sort of a semi-rural environment. So a lot of it's about like that and feeling like you are not in the world you really belong to. And half of it is about what takes place in these sort of cursed movies. But what's really cool is that like a lot of them are completely different types of movies. Like there's science fiction movies. There's like a Pixar movie in one of them, like for kids, and then there's like there's just like a lot of different, and there's like a rom-com. So each one you kind of get like a different sort of genre style of movie in the comic.
Have you been sitting with these movie ideas as are they half serious pitches or also? I mean,
no, they're really kind of wacky. Like there's one that's like the Pixar one. It's supposed to be like cars, but it's about guns. It's just called Guns, and it's about these guns hanging out together.
That's great, man. Like planes and all these other movies.
Yeah, right. It's like, but it's about guns.
That's fantastic.
Let's be honest. It's like this. If they were this is what American culture is about now. It's not really about cars. It's certainly not about planes.
Dude, you are like Pat Chayefsky back in the 70s. Like, well, here's a ridiculous idea, and I'm sure 10 years from now we are going to see a release called Guns. I have no doubt about that.
Yeah,
So
no,
that's
there's
still.
nothing too stupid for people. I've discovered that. I'm banking on that. And then there's another one that's sort of an unauthorized sequel to ET called ETC, etc. Which for legal reasons is not a sequel to ET. They're completely different.
That's excellent. I'm going to get to a comment in a second that I love, and it's a good question. But really, I did not expect Dead Box to be about the Red Box movies. I'm fascinated by those because you do. It's like, wait, so Bruce Willis released like 5 movies last year, and I'm just hearing about him now. Not that that's a positive or negative.
Yeah, no, those are aimed at. Those movies are actually aimed at you and me. They're what they release what they call geezer teasers, where it's like Bruce Willis is in a movie for 20 seconds, and they'll show the 20 seconds that Bruce Willis is in the teaser, so that you and I will go see it.
I understand, man. No, you're right. And I've got a buddy that like is a connoisseur of Redbox and always finds like the ones that are from a gut level like entertaining movies. And he'll like have a stack and he'll be like, all right, you want to give it the 10-minute rule? And I'm like, all right. So we
I always thought that would be like,
it's like if we're intrigued, we keep watching. If not, we bail.
The best job on earth has got to be writing Redbox movies because one, there's no expectations. You can't really fail. It's not like, oh, well, this is a poor script, we're not going to make this Redbox movie. And yet, because the fact that there are no expectations and no one's looking over your shoulder means you actually have the freedom to write something good if you want it. You could write about anything. There's nothing too crazy or out there for a Redbox movie.
Do you think, and this has been a recurring question I've been asking, it really does seem that, like, from a theater standpoint, we're either getting tentpole movies or we're getting horror. And then really a lot of this, stuff that does wind up at Redbox and everything, it's like, well, like, what is this being made for? What size movie? I always feel like the mid-budget movies are maybe an endangered species. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't know too much about what's going on in the industry, but yeah, it seems like the tentpole movies, the DCU and MCU, are kind of carrying the industry. They're the ship floating along, and because the ship is so powerful, there's room for all these lifeboats that sort of circle the ship, or the flotilla that travels in its wake, and that's where you get sort of like the the lower budget sort of Redbox movies or straight to Netflix stuff. It isn't, but it's not like, but I think you're right. There isn't like a lot of these movies like you used to see in like the 80s and 90s where it's not, they intend it to like draw on a big audience, but it doesn't have any car chases. It doesn't have any CGI. It's about like, a newspaper or, something like that. Like something like The Player, like Robert Altman's The Player.
Great example. Yes.
Would be hard to pull off today, especially with all that talent.
I think you're absolutely right from a talent standpoint. I think it would be made into a 6-hour miniseries or something.
Yeah, that's the other thing. There's all these other avenues. Is that so they would probably today they'd say, well, that's an HBO Max miniseries, and they'd send it over there, which is valid. It's totally. But yeah, the result is that you don't see a lot of those types of movies anymore. They either don't get made because they aren't like tentpole movies, or they get sent off to the streaming services.
Yeah, and also, God, I just was watching one of my favorite kind of industry watching YouTube shows, and they were saying now that a movie in a theater, it's down to 45 days as opposed to 60, and it's like.
And I think that trend generally incentivizes worse movies because you're getting in, making your money, and getting out for the word of mouth can really take hold. So it's like it really, I think what you're incentivized now as a major studio to do is to make really awesome trailers and really not mediocre movies, because it's all about getting people in those first 2 or 3 weeks, getting their money. And if you can have a scene that makes no sense in the movie at all, but gives you like 10 awesome seconds in a movie trailer, that's going in the movie.
I agree with you there. And honestly, I'll accept levels of fantasy from DC and Marvel movies because you've already got people flying around and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But like, I've never had an interest in Fast and Furious, and it's only gotten worse from what's been described to me in terms of the ridiculous.
Yeah, they're like driving cars in space now, aren't they? Isn't that like the new one?
Yeah. I mean, it's like
I mean, I've never seen any of them. I'm not one to judge. I'm a guy who wrote the Flintstones, so who am I to judge anything? But yeah, in a way, I kind of like that trend. Like, well, if we're going to make 10 movies of this franchise, eventually it's just going to get so ridiculous that it's going to be a parody of itself.
Jesus.
And I think, maybe embrace that.
Well, John Hughes, by the way, John Hughes, hey, I love your films. I'm sorry you passed away. Love all your work, Mark. Any chance of doing more Prez? I enjoyed reading that during all of the craziness of 2016. Agreed. And
Well,
yeah,
thanks.
man, another great series, man. Very great comment on.
That was the first comic book I ever wrote. That was where I cut my teeth in this industry, and unfortunately, I don't think there's any more on the way. But it was a good learning experience, and initially it was going to be 12 issues that ran right up to the 2016 election, but it got canceled 6 issues in, I think, primarily because nobody was reading it, except for John Hughes, of course. It didn't go all the way to the election. So again, I got to tell half the story I was planning to tell, but I don't know if it was very much about its time and place. So I don't know if it makes much sense to go back to that now.
Okay. Were you able to did you have enough notice that issue 6 was going to be the last one that you were able to?
No, not really. We were still planning to make the back 6. We just realized there was going to be first they were saying, well, there's going to be a delay between issue 6 and 7, and then it was like, well, we're thinking about combining it in like a pack with other comics, and then it was just like, nope, it's canceled. I think they really wanted to do more. I think it's just hard to justify when the sales, were dismal. But luckily for me, because that one got canceled, I was able to. They put me on the Flintstones, which to me is like the first comic I felt like where I knew what I was doing as I was writing it. To the extent that I know what I'm doing now, I feel like I'm still learning. I'm still figuring out how wrong I was about things in comics, and I'm still learning. But to me, that was like the first one I really approached feeling like I know how to write a comic book.
I hope that sales of the new hardcover for the Flintstones prompts the Hanna-Barbera people to give you another crack at another volume. I'm sure you've got more Flintstone stories you might want to tell.
Yeah, the hardcover is not going to include any new stuff, just the 12 issues and that stuff. But yeah, I mean, I would, if they wanted to, if they were open to like doing more, if Hanna-Barbera was open to licensing for more Flintstone stories, and Steve Pugh wanted to do it, I'd be on board for doing more.
That'd be great. I'd love to see it. Mikey Jesus, good question here. How do you decide if an idea should be used on a big 2 character or a book versus coming at it independently from the start? What is that process for you? You're a master of the craft.
Oh, well, thank you, Mikey. Generally, if I have an idea, like first, that's becoming a creator-owned idea. Generally, if I have an idea that I'm going to use the big 2 character, it's because somebody's asked me if I'm interested in writing a big 2 character, or I'm pitching writing a big 2 character, and then I come up with the ideas based upon that character, based upon what I want to say about them. So usually it's the direction, the order in which I have the idea. If the idea comes first, it's like, well, I've got to turn this into a creator-owned comic. If the character comes first, then it's like, well, I want to write this character, and now I'm going to come up with some ideas for them.
Refresh my memory regarding your Future State Superman stuff. Was that the beginning? That was the beginning of this year, wasn't it? Imperious Lex and all that stuff?
Yeah, right. That was in February and March.
Yeah. And that's the last time we talked, man. Unbelievable. Really, really great. Great ideas. I'm a massive fan of the idea of Lexor, the planet where they all worship Lex, and Lex is a hero, and what they did in the Silver Age, and you put this incredible modern spin on it, and it really, I love the idea too that as older characters, both Superman and Luthor find themselves once again in Lexor, and what happens there.
Yeah, no, Lexor is a great idea. It's a shame that like some of the Silver Age comics, it was kind of wasted on like Lex Luthor just trying to find like a good place for him to fist fight. But it really is kind of a great idea that like you have this planet where Lex can sort of live out his fantasies and like do what he always imagined he was going to do on Earth that he would have done if Superman had never arrived. And that's kind of what the Future State Imperious Lex series is about like Superman showing up to spoil even that. Like Lex Luthor can't even be the dictator of this out of the way planet that he's gone to because Superman spoiled all his fun on Earth.
That's awesome, man. I hope. I don't know. Do you have interest in Jonathan Kent, young Superman?
Yeah, I think and I think one of the things that I was interested in writing about Lexor was like seeing Superman having to deal with the fact that he's having to go someplace where he's diminished. He's having to go someplace where he doesn't have the full complement of his powers for at least for very long. And I think Jonathan Kent kind of represents that too. He's like he's sort of like a slightly diminished version of Superman, and those vulnerabilities create like new storylines and possibilities. So yeah, I think Tom Taylor does a terrific job with that character, and but yeah, it's an interesting approach to Superman.
Without spoiling, might we see more DC output from you in the future?
Definitely will.
Great.
I've got some things that haven't been announced yet, but I've got like right now 3 things in the works with DC.
Excellent. That's fantastic, man. No, seriously, you're a great fit at both of the big two, and you're a fresh new voice, relatively speaking. And I think that's great, and I'm really glad that they recognize that and are giving you these opportunities. So
well, thank
can
you.
we then safely say that the same goes for Marvel? There might be new Marvel books for you?
I have like a one-off scheduled with Marvel, but I don't have anything else really big booked with Marvel after Fantastic Four Life Story. But yeah, I'll keep writing as long as they want me to.
That's
I
cool.
really enjoy working for both of them and doing the creator-owned stuff. Like I said, it's sort of my ideal life. I just kind of live within my imagination most of the time, and it's a life I would highly recommend to anyone out there.
Okay. Here, I'll let you repeat the details of the Flintstone hardcover.
Oh yes,
Jerry's late jumping in, so go.
The hardcover, welcome Jerry. The hardcover is happening, all 12 issues plus a ton of extras, including the Booster Gold Flintstones crossover, are coming out in a single volume in February.
That's amazing. That's so great. And yes,
sorry, it's not coming out in time for Christmas, but it's for Groundhog Day. It should be right around Groundhog Day. Perfect Groundhog Day gift, by the way.
And perfect for that, malaise that always happens in February. Where
don't get it as a Valentine's gift unless you're really, really sure that it's going to be well received.
The grayness of February. I always agree with Lewis Black, who says he hates February. That's why it's the shortest month, because it's nothing but gray all the time, and it's Hey man, being in Portland and everything, how are things going as far as not only the weather but the Michigas that is still happening in a portion of the city, and maybe it isn't. I have to admit, the trouble that is there still any occupying of a portion of Portland? Is that still going on?
Not really. I mean, it was always very like limited to like tiny areas. Portland, it's kind of hilarious. Like when you read on like social media, like how Portland's burning, and it's like they're gonna have to they're gonna have to rebuild Portland. It's like as they're I'm reading this, there's like a 10-year-old walking through downtown, like buying a popsicle from like it's just like hype and
good.
Yeah, no, Portland's great. It's like a big slumber party here.
I visited in 2019 and spent like 5 days there. Rose City was part of it, but I really got a chance, I felt, to really like walk around and enjoy things. I visited Periscope. Bendis was putting up with me for a couple days. And I don't remember if I saw you or not at Rose City that year. 2019.
No, I don't think so. I don't think I was there that year. I'll be there this year. If you're coming up to anyone going to Rose City this September, I'll be there. That's
good to hear, man. No, I just got back from Terrificon in Connecticut, and it was a lot of fun. But I won't deny that I am a little nervous with all the Delta shit going on. I had committed to it. I really wanted to do it just to get out of Chicago and enjoy some different environment. And it was perfect weather and great seeing everybody, and I had a blast. But by the same token, it's like, all right, let's let this Delta shit kind of settle a little bit more, and then we'll see. I mean, the next one I'm planning on going to is C2E2 in December because it's my backyard. We'll see. I've
got like 4 cons lined up for the remainder of 2020 2021. I got Rose City, and then I'm going to like the fan expos in Toronto and Denver in October. And then my last one's Emerald City in Seattle. So if you're in any of those towns, stop by and say hello. But yeah, I'm a little nervous. I mean, I've been vaccinated and everything, but with like the Delta variant and the breakthrough infections, I'm a little nervous. I might not shake hands. I might.
That's depending on where we were wearing masks. A lot of elbow bumping. I hear you, man, and everything. But yeah, it's sad. I mean, it is
right. It's sad that we have to do it. Like we should have this behind. If people had just gotten vaccinated when they could have, we'd have all this behind us.
You would think. I mean, yeah, good Lord. I mean, May and June were almost like these paradise months of, all right, we're almost, it's almost normal again. This is going to be all right. And then, the mouth breathers, unfortunately, are still a problem. Hopefully they're learning, because it seems like even their leaders are finally starting to be like, yeah, maybe get vaccinated. Maybe that's a good idea. It's like, yeah, thanks. Jesus.
Yeah.
Idiots.
I think for a long time they just thought they would keep their street cred for being these anti-vax conspiracy theorist populists, and that they would be saved from themselves by the national government and people just doing the right thing. And then when it turned out people actually took them at their word and took them seriously and actually did not get vaccinated, then now they're having to backpedal. Now they're having to all right, I'll back down.
Yeah. Hey, guess what? Your state's still messed up. It's like, yeah. All right.
Like 1 out of 4, full 25% of all new cases are coming out of Florida. I mean, that's just crazy. That's absurd.
I know. And he's Leslie Nielsen in that part of Police Academy where he's in front of the fireworks factory exploding. Nothing to see here. Everything's fine. Everything's okay. It's like, yeah, sure it is. Way to go, Ron. Nice going, Ron. Yeah, I'm with you. Absolutely. I was going to say, unfortunately, timing, rereading Life Stories, both the first 2 issues today, and I was watching CNN, and they had a list of all like the worst commentators that are out there still, preaching against the vaccine. And they show a picture of Robert Kennedy Jr., who looks just like his father. And it's like, oh man, and again, I mean, I see the realities of the Kennedy family, but that said, like you can't help but love Bobby, or at least I can't. And it's like, oh man, he looks just like him. And it's like, if I don't know, get a
that family's legacy has taken a few hits, I think.
But just that face, and it's like
not been a good last 50 years for them.
Yeah, no, it hasn't. Definitely not. So yeah, it bums me out. What are you gonna do? You know what I haven't read yet, and I will do my best to do so before we talk next. I've seen your output of. You've done a lot of a handful of Batman stories, haven't you?
Yeah, I did a bunch of the digital first Batman stories, Gotham Knights, which I really liked writing Batman, and I got I can't really talk too much about it, but I do have sort of a Batman adjacent title coming out at some point.
Wonderful. And also I love your Batman parody in Second Coming. And in that
Night Justice.
What's his name again?
Night Justice.
Night Justice, absolutely, man. I'm screwed up. My parents died young. What do you want from me?
Yeah, he's like a sort of sweeter, more lovable Batman who just sort of got sucked into that lifestyle. He decided to become Batman when he's 20 and just is sort of never gotten out of it.
As a and really those are great scenes. Well, I guess in his case that was the scene. It was that in the psychiatrist room, or was it playing out on TV?
No, it was in the group therapy.
Group therapy, yes,
right,
okay,
with all the heroes.
Yes, and there was great interplay there. I also love that you do go to these insipid, and I will confess I'm a watcher of this crap, because I came from sports radio, and unfortunately the news producers have turned panel commentary into sports radio, in terms of it's just a bunch of pundits that aren't talking to each other or listening to each other and talking over each other and disagreeing. And you've really got that pattern down. And I, unfortunately, are you addicted to this nonsense as I am, in terms of, you're just trying to get information and you can't help but run into these.
I can't watch it anymore. It just boils my blood, which is why I write about it. because it just like is ruined. It's like I can't watch like news on TV anymore because it just destroys me. It makes me feel so bad about the future.
I'm with you, man. Thank God for public radio. It seems like public radio might be one of the last places where we can get information without all the bullshit.
I listen to NPR and I read stuff from credible journalistic outlets online, and that's pretty much how I get my news.
Can you count those all on one hand, basically?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. I know. Jesus Christ, that's so funny. So yeah, what else, Mark? What else is in store for you? Either have we hit all the books that are coming up in the recent in the next couple of months? Or?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, there's like some things I can't talk about, but yeah, I think the big ones are obviously Not All Robots just came out today. Deadbox from Vault comes out later this month, and then Second Coming's back. So and like I mentioned, there's going to be some more Billionaire Island and the new comic My Bad from Ahoy. So it feels weird because I wrote so much during the pandemic that wasn't getting released because the comic book industry shut down. But now it's all coming out. Now it's a tsunami of stuff.
That's so funny. Here, let's see. Panelists on panel shows equal honorary members of the League of Annoyance. Oh, I like that.
Right.
The League of Annoyance.
It's a good analogy.
I'd like to form that supervillain team. And I think that's a great idea. Jesus Christ. That's great. Hey man, seriously, you're putting out great books, and I'm really glad that all the various publishers want to be in the Mark Russell business. Because,
well, thanks. I'm happy to be wanted. I hope it continues for some time.
Here. And truly, I mean, we mentioned Steve Pugh, Richard Case. I mean, Diodato. You're working with great artists all over the place.
Right. And Leonard Kirk. I want to mention Leonard Kirk, who's also working with Richard on Second Coming. I think he's doing stellar work too. But yeah, I've been very lucky getting to work with such great artists, like starting with Ben Caldwell and Prez, who made that book like look very distinctive and made it very, instantly sort of got the sort of aesthetic that we were going for. Well,
I'm sorry that they didn't have the forethought of you regarding the Eisners. I can say that with the Harveys and the Ringos coming up, I'm a Ringo judge. I've already turned in my ballot, so I can confess that. I won't say what I nominated. But that said, I saw Mark Russell books in consideration.
Oh well, thank you. That's good to know.
That happened absolutely.
I'm not gonna get completely shut out of the awards season.
Here's hoping. Absolutely, man. I'm only one voice, but it's I hope it's interesting, and I hope that you get and again, it's not about the hardware. It's about being able to make the books and gathering the audience. Right. Clearly, you are gathering the audience,
and I like the nominations and on the rare opportunities they actually want to win awards. But really, it's like, and I'm not saying this just to put us to sound nice, but this really is, I think, just the way I feel. Like, to me, it's really more about like being able to interact with people and live this way and live the life of an artist and have people I have genuine sort of conversations with about it. To me, that's what really matters. And, thank you to you and everybody out there who's like commenting, because this is what, to me, the big award in life is being part of the great human conversation we call culture.
I hear you, man. Absolutely. And you're absolutely contributing to that culture. B. Schlemichael wants to know, if you ever have aspired to be an artist or penciler.
Well, funny you should say that, because I actually you're going to see some original Mark Russell art in the new series My Bad. I'm not doing the interiors because I suck as a penciler and inker, but I'm good enough to do. I made like a fake Hostess fruit pie ad starring the chandelier and other characters. So I was good enough to do that. They let me do like a fake Hostess ad. And also I made one of those pages where it's like they used to have the back page in comic books where it sells all these products that can't possibly work. I made a page where I drew a bunch of those products and wrote the little text for them. So you will see some original Mark Russell artwork in My Bad.
That's awesome. Now, again, connect the dots for publishers. My Bad is coming out from
Ahoy.
Okay, and also we've got the Monster cereal eventually being collected over there. Second Coming also coming from there, and the Edgar Allan Poe snifters of Snifter of
Right.
Terror.
Yeah,
Is it-
Snifter of Terror. Actually,
Okay.
it was originally the Snifter of Terror. Now they've changed it to the Snifter of Blood.
Oh, okay, very
So,
good. Still works, absolutely. And then from Vault, we've got Deadbox.
Vault, we got Deadbox, and then AWA, we've got Not All Robots.
Not
And
all
this
robots,
Is my
absolutely.
cat.
And your cat. What's your cat's name?
Willow.
Hey,
Say hello,
Willow,
Willow.
how you doing? Good looking cat.
Yeah.
That's all right. I love when pets, especially since we're all doing Zoom and StreamYard and stuff, and all of a sudden it's like Hitchcock making a cameo. I like
Yeah,
it.
she just wants to be where the action is.
I respect that. Well done, Mark. Keep it up. I mean, truly, it's always a pleasure when I know there's a new Mark Russell comic book to read and talk about. And yeah, once the new announcements happen, you're always welcome back. And
Wow.
I appreciate what you do, and would love to talk about this stuff a lot more.
Well, thanks, John. I'm happy to be here, and yeah, I'll come back anytime. Just let me know.
That's awesome, Mark Russell, everybody. Tomorrow is Thursday. I gotta do the math. Another episode of Kinescope. I don't know if you're a fan of early live television at all, Mark, and if you are, we should have you on as a guest sometime.
Oh, well, maybe. I mean, I could watch some, and then.
Well, if, we don't want it to all be sad stuff. I mean, like tomorrow night, we're looking at a couple of James Dean's TV plays, because really he only made 4 movies, but he made a couple dozen live television.
Really, I had no idea he'd done all that television work. It's pretty interesting.
There you go, man. That's that's kind of the point. And I'll let the audience know if they haven't experienced Kinescope. That's kind of what Gabe Hartman and myself interested us in, is watching these early chapters in a lot of actors' lives, writers and directors. George Roy Hill and Sidney Lumet.
You mentioned Patty Chayefsky earlier. He got his start working in
Marty
TV.
Right. Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, that's the thing. It's like these guys. And also, so, there's the heavy dramas, Rod Serling, certainly. But then there are also the comedies of live television. And as much as we are looking at the anthology shows, we just knew to kind of lighten things up. We were going to do some comedy. So we'll look at Sid Caesar. We'll look at Nichols and May, Mike Nichols and Elaine May, and certainly the Honeymooners. I mean, those classic 39, they developed a special camera that shot live and film at the same time.
Oh, wow.
So as good looking as they are compared to the shitty kinescopes that were the basic technology of the day. So there's an opportunity there. Ernie Kovacs, of course.
Right.
So yeah, we're going to try and balance things out with the pathos and the light stuff. So that's all happening tomorrow night, 9:30 Pacific time. And we'll be, like I said, we're talking about James Dean tomorrow. And then also Trek Watch is coming back, because we're going to get the next season of Lower Decks, and then after that, Star Trek Prodigy. So Franco and my buddy Mitch Halleck from Terrificon and myself will be talking about that stuff on Friday, and a whole lot more. Also the panels from Terrificon. So look forward to all that. That's coming up in the days and weeks ahead. Until then, get vaccinated, stay safe.